There is a popular idea that humans are, at our core, dark beings, that we are naturally selfish and aggressive, making the act of being good an exhausting struggle against our own true nature. When people talk about having a dark side, they are usually referring to a specific set of universal human impulses: anger, envy, the desire for control, and the capacity to cause harm. We often suppress these feelings because we fear losing control. The internal logic suggests that if we acknowledge our anger or envy, those feelings will hijack our behavior entirely. This creates a psychological error where we equate the existence of an impulse with our core identity. If you experience an angry thought, you assume you are a bad person, turning a natural feeling into a threat against your self-worth. This flowchart maps the mechanical difference between guilt and shame. The top branch is guilt, the realization I did something wrong. This keeps growth possible. The bottom branch is shame, the belief I am wrong, which locks a person into a rigid, defensive state. The weight of shame is so heavy that the brain reacts defensively. To protect your self-image from collapsing, your mind actively rejects reality, deflecting any evidence that confirms you caused harm. Instead of changing the behavior, the brain rewrites the story. We use moral licensing, telling ourselves we're good people overall, so this mistake doesn't count. We shift the blame, or we dehumanize the affected person to decide they deserved the harm. The pursuit of moral purity forces people to bury the truth and ignore their actual impact on others. When you refuse to acknowledge your capacity to cause harm, you lose the ability to correct it. Biology doesn't support the concept of a singular dark side. Humans operate on multiple, parallel biological systems running at the same time. This diagram illustrates our baseline biology. The sharp lines represent the survival system, built to protect the self and compete. The flowing nodes represent the relational system, wired to connect, care, and cooperate with others. The problem arises under environmental pressure. When subjected to severe time constraints, immediate fear, or strict commands, the brain abruptly abandons the relational system. Empathy is a fragile cognitive state rather than a permanent trait. Under threat, the brain shifts to prioritize speed and self-protection. The question stops being, how does this affect them, and becomes, how do I get through this? When people cause harm under intense pressure, they haven't suddenly turned into monsters. They have simply become narrowed, losing the cognitive space required to consider other humans. The Arreqqana philosophical framework addresses this by manually widening a narrowed mind, deliberately untangling a person's identity from their actions. Their model dissects harm into three components: a jagged wave representing internal feeling, a solid block for the action, and a radiating ripple for the effect. This separates the emotion of anger, the action of pushing, and the downstream fear it causes. Isolating the act and effect removes the need to place moral judgment on the initial feeling. You learn that you can experience intense emotion without acting destructively. This separation shifts the focus of morality away from judging internal impulses. Instead, it prioritizes a clear-eyed assessment of impact and the active responsibility required to address it. We commonly frame morality as a conflict between light and dark. A more accurate predictor of behavior is the distinction between an unexamined person and an examined one. The unexamined person operates on a closed loop. They react blindly to impulses, justify the resulting harm to protect their ego, and avoid accountability. The examined person notices their internal impulses, regulates their behavior, and steps forward to repair the harm when that regulation fails. An ethical person is not someone free of aggressive impulses, but someone who takes conscious responsibility for their patterns. Rebuilding self-trust requires a strict process. First, you must separate your identity from the choice. It is not, I am a bad person, but I made a harmful choice. Second, you must fully acknowledge the exact impact of that action on the affected party, without minimizing or defending the behavior. Finally, you execute restitution to repair the harm and track your behavioral alignment moving forward. Self-trust comes from consistent behavior change, not promises. True self-trust is the proven, tested capacity to face your mistakes and correct them. You are not dangerous because you have impulses. You become dangerous only when you refuse to examine them. Your morality depends entirely